Denver has been misrepresenting its success in getting people off the streets and into shelter. It seems even city leaders didn't understand the numbers. Colorado Senator Michael Bennet is standing alone for Ukraine. It's not clear if his strategy will work. Restaurant owners say a coming minimum wage hike will be a catastrophe. So let's look at the last four of them.
We're looking at probably an $80,000 increase this year in this coming year on the server minimum wage, which is, again, how do you accommodate for that?
And celebrating Hanukkah big.
It's a lot of chocolate. It's a lot of chocolate.
From the most fun to the most frustrating things happening in our community. You will see them all on Next. For months, the city of Denver has publicly misrepresented how it tracks success in fighting homelessness. The city allowed taxpayers to believe that it's been more successful than it actually has been at keeping people sheltered. It appears that the misrepresentation began with genuine confusion inside city departments as they all raced to meet Mayor Mike Johnston's goal to get 1,000 people off the streets by the end of the year. But well after city leaders found out about the misleading numbers, Mayor Johnston's office played word games and didn't acknowledge that the city had internal confusion. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is the city's House 1000 outcomes dashboard. This shows how many people they are successfully getting out of homelessness. This is an old image because the city took the dashboard down today as they faced questions from journalists about whether it's been misleading. Taxpayers, journalists, even city officials were led to believe that that dashboard shows how many people have come off the streets and stayed in shelter for at least 14 days. That was, after all, the success metric repeatedly described to the public and city council by the Johnston administration.
In order for someone to be counted as successful, they need to hit that 14-day mark. This is about permanence, and that was simply just a point at which we had to determine, okay, we've got someone to a greater degree of stability. We can count that as someone towards our 1,000-person goal. And so that's where that number came from.
With the city not even halfway to that House 1,000 goal by mid-December, our next team, producer Mallory Harris specifically, has been tracking the numbers daily, and she was the one who realized that the public tracker was not showing the number of people housed for at least 14 days, but instead was showing everyone who had ever been moved inside, even for just a moment. That made the city's effort seem more successful than it actually has been. But when we took our findings to the mayor's office, his spokesman chalked it up to our confusion about how they track success, not acknowledging that the city knew that it had publicly misrepresented how it was tracking the success of its top priority. This was summed up well in some excellent follow-up reporting by Denverite today, headlined, "The city's counter for people moving indoors for 14 or more days hasn't been counting people moving indoors for 14 or more days." Denverite writes, quote, "No immediate efforts were made to correct the record or let the public know that multiple agencies and the mayor's office had been letting misinformation about its housing track record spread for months." The city's House 1000 dashboard was counting up quickly toward 1,000, even after city leaders knew that they had not housed, by their own definition, that many people. Let me tell you what I told the city directly today. Confusion happens, especially when you're trying to do something really hard, really fast, like bringing 1,000 people in off the streets in a couple of months. But deception is a choice. When the city of Denver realized that its own leaders, and therefore the tax-paying public, had been led to believe that Denver was more successful at housing the homeless than Denver actually had been, well, the city should have told the public that. And they certainly should not have tried to gaslight journalists who figured it out and started asking questions. Democratic Senator Michael Bennet is making a one-man stand for Ukraine. He's threatening to hold up end-of-year votes to keep Congress in town until they vote on more military aid for the Ukrainians. Only takes one senator to just grind things to a halt, and Bennett's not going to let the Senate vote on a short-term deal to authorize the FAA before the end of the year. He doesn't have anything against planes. It's just that's his lever to force a vote on Ukraine. Republicans say Bennett's risking an FAA shutdown. He blames the GOP for holding up aid to Ukraine and Israel in return for what they want on the border.
He is holding the American flying public hostage. He is saying, because he's mad about what's happening on Ukraine funding, he wants to shut the FAA down. He wants to shut jobs down in the Denver airport.
I would never have attached these immigration issues to the Ukraine bill, but some Republican colleagues have done it because they've said this is an important bill. We're going to use this to lever, our concerns about immigration or the border.
That strategy is likely to hold up the Senate, at least for a few days. It's not clear if Republicans are actually going to move on aid to Ukraine. But Democratic Senate leadership has already canceled part of the holiday recess, hoping that they might reach a deal next week. So Denver is about to raise its minimum wage for the 5th time since 2020. It'll be $18.29 an hour starting January 1st. $18.29. We do have numbers on how previous minimum wage hikes have made an impact. So that's going to be Jennifer Meckel's crystal ball for this next increase.
Family has been around since 1927.
For nearly a century,
It's been an amazing run for the family.
Sam Armitage and his family have been running restaurants in Denver, like Sam's No. 3 Diner downtown.
It used to be fun, though.
Yes, the last few years have been trying.
Obviously, we had a pandemic, and then food prices went crazy, supply chains went crazy, and the minimum wage didn't stop increasing. And
When Denver's minimum wage goes up January 1st, hourly workers will start at $18.29 an hour. Tipped employees, like the servers at Sam's, bump to $15.27 an hour.
we're looking at probably an $80,000 increase this year, in this coming year, on the server minimum wage, which is, again, how do you accommodate for that?
The Colorado Restaurant Association surveyed about 150 restaurant owners this fall and found the average owner expects payroll costs to go up $78,000. 87% plan to increase menu prices, like Sam's, and 67% will reduce staffing levels or staff hours.
It's a hard one. Staffing levels go hand in hand with hours of operation.
While restaurants count their labor costs, the state is tracking something different. Unemployment rates in Denver, which recovered post-pandemic better than neighboring cities, and sales tax revenue in Denver, which went up, even with higher minimum wage.
Our data just show that overall, Denver doesn't appear to have lost business activity and sales of goods or services. That's what the sales tax data show. They don't appear to have lost jobs.
We're not making more money.
After years of uncertainty, 2024 may bring more.
The food costs went up, the labor costs went up, so you shrink the pennies. Again, we're a volume business.
So Sam's tells me they're paying their non-servers already well above minimum wage. This isn't really going to affect them. He's more worried about the increase for tipped employees, and he still doesn't have his pre-pandemic staff all the way up again. They're still trying to increase their staff and increase their hours again. So that tipped wage now, it's like 15 something, is more than other places in Colorado's full minimum wage. So he's kind of freaked out about that.
But wait, that was your first time at Sam's?
That was my first time at Sam's today.
Oh, Sam's is so good. It's like the greatest comfort food in the world.
Middle day of the week, and it was pretty full.
I mean, it's one of those things where you look at it and it's like, obviously this is going to have some impact, but it's so tough to pull out a year recently that hasn't had a bunch of other factors going on. Inflation, pandemic, like all these other things going on.
Absolutely. And I did ask the state, I'm like, are we even really far enough past the pandemic to make a difference? They said, we are, but it is still early, like 2 years.
Yeah. All right, Jenny, thank you. Conservative leaders in Colorado are urging criminal prosecutions of some librarians and school leaders who won't ban books, often books involving LGBTQ characters. Our Jaleesa Irizarry was curious how that might impact book sales.
Drive fast enough and it might be missed. A new business that prides itself on welcoming what others may not.
Let's see.
Dyla Ray owns Petals and Pages. It's a bookstore that does things in reverse. The titles, she says, that are often buried in other shops get full display.
We are queer owned and managed, and in our shop, our banned books table is one of our most popular tables here in the store. People are wanting to read those books.
New numbers back that up. According to stats provided to NBC News by Circana Bookscan, a data provider for the publishing industry, LGBTQ book sales are up 7% from last year and up 200% from 2019. This comes as the American Library Association says there were 695 attempts to censor, the most since they started tracking in 2001. The ALA says most of the books challenged this year are about or written by people of color or those who identify as LGBTQ.
I think if we write them, if we sell them, people will come. They're interested in buying them.
The challenge now is continuing to write them. In a previous interview, LGBTQ author Mark Oshiro said after making a banned list, multiple teachers canceled class visits and sales never spiked. Another banned author, Maya Kobabe, got a lot of success. Kobabe worries for those other LGBTQ authors that may not be as lucky.
Please don't let the threat of censorship silence your voice before you've even spoken.
But as long as they're written, as long as they're sold, Ray says
yes,
they'll have a home here.
For sure.
Despite LGBTQ book sales being up, total fiction sales are down. Some in the industry say it really speaks to the movement LGBTQ authors are in right now. They're writing LGBTQ characters into storylines they've never been in before. Kyle?
So, kind of like Jenny Meckel's story about minimum wage, it's never just going to be one thing that's pushing book sales or decreasing book sales. It can't just be the fact that they're being talked about in terms of book bans that has more people interested in the books.
It's never just one thing. There's always multiple layers to problems or resurgences, right? And one of them here is book talk, apparently. TikTok book reviews apparently are very big. Pardon me, I don't actually have TikTok, so I don't know a ton of details on it. But apparently a lot of their reviews have become incredibly popular and have encouraged other people to actually read these books as well.
All right, Jaleesa, thank you very much. Colorado's ability to send life-saving alerts has some serious limitations. Thanks to reporting you've seen here, they're trying to fix that.
You're looking at 300 pounds of chocolate right now. That's a lot of chocolate.
Indeed it is, but this is the last night of Hanukkah, so eat it all. Nearly half of Colorado's local emergency officials who send out emergency alerts cannot send those alerts in languages other than English, or they don't know if they can. CU Boulder's researchers discovered that as they surveyed emergency managers across Colorado. The new draft report out of CU's Natural Hazard Center points to 9 News' reporting as they propose an overhaul to Colorado's approach to these emergency alerts. In the months after the Marshall Fire, we showed you how different counties use different tools to send notifications to your phone. Some work better than others. The researchers say that Colorado's patchwork of systems gets in the way of reaching people in dangerous situations like wildfires, severe weather, or active shooter situations, especially since some of the systems that counties use to send alerts rely on some sketchy translation software. At a feedback session today, Manuela Cifuentes from the city of Boulder gave an example of that software in action.
I've caught a lot of errors in Spanish in Reachwell in my jurisdiction that would lead people not to do what we're asking them to do. Ward is an actual place, but it translated ward as district. And so people could be like, oh, I don't know which district they're talking about. I'm not going to do anything.
Can you imagine that? You get an alert for District Colorado and you're like, huh? So the federal government's eventually going to require your phone to do that translating itself rather than it falling on local emergency managers. Back in October, the FCC decided to make cell phone manufacturers do what they do for everything else on your phone, which is to show you things in the language you choose. But that process for emergency alerts is going to take 2.5 years. Which is too long, Chris Bianchi, and that is why you're working on this issue in the interim with a group of other bilingual meteorologists who are trying to figure out how do you get weather alerts to people in their language of choice.
Yeah, Kyle, it's a very complicated issue. You just heard that a second ago from that official. Translating words, it's not as simple as taking something, plugging it into Google Translate. There's a lot of slang and a lot of issues that go into translating something from English to Spanish. For example, the word for watch, for warning, it can vary by country, and that terminology is quite difficult to translate. So again, it's a little intensive, and hopefully that adds a little context to what we're seeing. Meantime, here in Denver, we're at 77 consecutive hours at mostly or fully cloudy skies. Welcome to the Midwest. 1 p.m. Monday till 6 p.m. today, it has been cloudy, and it's all thanks to this upper level low that continues to spin and draw up some moisture out of the south and the east. That means we're still just kind of socked in this cloud cover, but tonight, we will start to finally get rid of some of that cloud cover. For tonight, we'll drop back in the mid-20s, some patchy fog around for us, especially north and east of the city tomorrow. That's more like it. 50 degrees, mostly sunny skies. It will be a bit breezy at times for us here along the Front Range. 10 and 20 mile an hour gusts, nothing too wild about that. Eastern Colorado could see some gusts up to about 30 miles an hour. But once we get past that, ridge of high pressure builds in. That means we'll be in the 50s, maybe even the low 60s for the foreseeable future. Take a look at the 7-day forecast. It is going to be, I think, by basically any definition, really nice for the next few days. We'll be near 60 by Sunday, near 60 next Tuesday as well. And get this, we don't have any meaningful chances for rain or snow in the Denver area until next weekend. I'm talking about the weekend before Christmas. So for the next 10 days or so, it's going to be mostly dry and also pretty warm.
And you're trying to build a sense of community by doing something so crazy like smashing 300 pounds of chocolate.
All right, I'm intrigued now. Is this a Hanukkah tradition or is this just awesome? Let's find out together next. This year's Hanukkah celebrations can't really be separated from the conflict in Israel and Gaza these days. Yet on the last night of Hanukkah, a group of Jewish teenagers in Colorado are focused only on the sweetness and the joy of the holiday. And to do that, they needed a big pool, a lot of Legos, and hundreds of pounds of chocolate.
It's a lot of chocolate. It's a lot of chocolate. We turned this place into Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. It was quite incredible.
And we have a crazy situation going on right now. Behind me, you see an 8-foot pool made out of Legos.
We are constructing the world's largest Hanukkah gelt.
The reason why we wanted to use Legos is because it's very important for all the different kids to know that they have their piece. 3, 2, 1, watch your knees. And that's what it's all about, is bringing together everybody to work on one common goal. You got it? Hey, is it centered?
Cart didn't move, did it? Beautiful. A miracle, like unfathomable. You're looking at 300 pounds of chocolate right now. That's a lot of chocolate.
It's usually a little coin, but today, you know, it's an 8-foot coin.
I thought we were taking that off.
Yeah. A lot of being Jewish is about remembering how our past has been not so sweet and not so amazing, but during holidays we usually eat sweet things to remind ourselves of how life can be sweet now and how we're supposed to look ahead and, you know, not think about our past and think about our future instead.
Okay, it's coming down. If you put your mind to something, you're able to accomplish it. This is something that I didn't think was going to be able to happen, and now it has, and I feel like it gives a deeper meaning to the sense of community that the Jewish people have.
Break me off a piece of that 8-foot gelt.
Okay, that's good. Happy Hanukkah to everybody. Feedback is here. Something tells me that it may involve questions about the tea. Thoughtful feedback from Greg tonight after we called out the city of Denver for misreporting or misleading numbers about its homelessness initiative. It appeared city leaders were initially confused about how they were presenting the numbers and then just never corrected the misperception. Greg says, how about a story about how the mayor's made tremendous progress on housing the homeless? Guy's only been here 5 months. He's already done more than his predecessor. And I think the mayor should and could get a lot of credit for that. I don't think, though, that we should excuse things like misrepresentations or his office gaslighting journalists who ask about those misrepresentations just because they're also doing tremendous work. You see what I mean? Carol says, I have not listened to anything you say tonight. Whenever the Hey Next mug is on camera, where can I get one? Should we get more of these? You tell me.